Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
So we go down, Jim Comey, get an absolutely brilliant memorial speech to those fallen men and to all of the men and women of the FBI who serve our country so well and law enforcement so well. There were family members there. Some of the children that were there were only 3 or 4 years old when their dads were killed on that street in Miami-Dade. 3 of the men that survived the fight were there and gave a rendition of how brave those men were and how they gave their lives. And a congresswoman stood up, and in the long tradition of empty barrels making the most noise, stood up there and all of that and talked about how she was instrumental in getting the funding for that building and how she took care of her constituents because she got the money, and she just called up President Obama, and on that phone call he gave the money, the $20 million to build the building.
What?
And she sat down and we were stunned. Stunned that she'd done it. Even for someone that is that empty a barrel, we were stunned.
Okay, everybody, I have news. John Kelly works for Satan. All right. Okay, then. It's Friday, you bastards. It's Friday. All right, we have to remind ourselves of 2 things. First, we have to give proper deference to those who have chosen to serve this country. And 2, John Kelly is chief of staff to the devil. All right, there. Because it's not, nothing he said there is true. It is an amazing thing. Last night, it became apparent to me that I had to take to the Twitter. And I had to explain to people who had started a hashtag for Frederica Wilson, and they were trashing Frederica Wilson, who has done nothing but become a doctor in education. She's Dr. Wilson, number 1. Number 2, she was a principal at a school here in Miami. Number 3, she has known this family for decades. For decades, and they don't know her as just a congresswoman. In fact, they know her for decades when she was the school principal to the school that Sergeant LaDavid Johnson's father attended. She was Sergeant LaDavid Johnson's father's principal. That's how far back she goes with this family. And the idea that, Kelly is in charge of making sure that things run smoothly for a man who does utterly horrible things. We get that. But General Kelly has to realize that if he is going to go out and defend a liar, he's going to have to do all the things that good liars do. And one of those is to try to keep his story straight. This story is completely untrue. This morning at like 6 a.m., I was watching New Day. And they had Frederica Wilson on, and they asked her, please comment about what John Kelly said about this building dedication that happened in 2015, which he's describing there. And she said, he lied. He's got to stop lying on me. I don't know why he did that.
Did you hear General Kelly's remarks in the press briefing room yesterday?
I heard his remarks, and I heard him say that I bragged that I secured the money for the building of the FBI building in Miramar, and that's a lie. I feel sorry for General Kelly. He has my sympathy for the loss of his son, but he can't just go on TV and lie on me. I was not even in Congress in 2009 when the money for the building was secured. So that's a lie. How dare he? However, I named the building at the behest of Director Comey with the help of Speaker Boehner.
She wasn't even in Congress. All right. And the building wasn't $20 million, as John Kelly said. The building actually cost $194 million. It's way different than 20. You know, I mean, if I owe $194 and I give you 20, you're not going to be satisfied, neither were the contractors who built the building. It was $194 million. The funding was secured 6 years before the dedication of the building. Nobody seems to be able to find, where the Miami Herald, who wrote the article that tried to explain to Americans concerned about this horrible, horrible congresswoman who's all hat, no cattle, and what's with her, and she's a horrible person, and she hates veterans. Before she was a congresswoman, she was a principal, she was an educator in Carroll City, Florida, which is a difficult place to be. And she started this group, this mentorship group for specifically young African-American boys who wanted to go into service, who wanted to join the military and specialize, or wanted to be firefighters, or who wanted to be police officers. And it was called 5,000 Role Models of Excellence. And David Johnson was one of these young boys who was part of the mentorship program, 5,000 Role Models of Excellence. That's number one. So she's known him since he's a little boy. Of course, the family would call her, now that she's a congressman, to guide her through, what do we do? They told us go to the airport and pick up the body. What do we do? So she said, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. Why the call was made while they were retrieving the remains of her husband with her children, I don't know. But Kelly lied yesterday, and I knew Kelly lied yesterday, and I told you the president is using John Kelly as a human shield because the president is sadistic, the president is cruel, the president has to be, right all the time, even though he started this because he wouldn't answer a question about what happened to the soldiers in Niger, which, by the way, I'm getting a clearer view. You may not want to hear what happened, but I'm getting a clearer view because I'm reading newspapers around the world. The American press is trying very hard to get, but it looks like, foreign press who are closer to where they got the story. I got one from Haaretz in Israel. But, okay, so what Comey lied about was that she claimed to have gotten the money, $20 million. No, the money was secured in 2009. She was not yet a congresswoman. The cost of the building was $194 million. The true story is the Miami Herald couldn't get the tape of her appearance at this building dedication, which is what it is. But the other newspaper down here, the Sun Sentinel, did. They did. And I'm going to play you just a few minutes of it. Okay? Here she is talking about what happened just a few weeks before this building dedication, how Republicans came to her, like Ileana Ross-Lehtinen, who's a Miami Congress member, Lincoln Diaz-Balart, who's a Miami Congress member, Republican, Mr. Cubiello, who was a newly elected Republican congressman from Florida, and she went with them. She did a bipartisan effort with them, and they went to John Boehner together, because James Comey had asked them to do this, please, because it was an FBI building and he was the director. And James Comey thought it would be appropriate and it would be wonderful if they could dedicate, name the building. And, it takes legislation to name post offices because this is all, Trump has been able to accomplish. And today is the 9-month anniversary. I could have created a new life already. This president has been able to create nothing but death, right? Okay, so today's the 9-month, done nothing. Anyway, she tells the story of how the building was named. And you will notice James Comey is also on the stage and he is smiling, loving this story, which contradicts everything that Kelly said.
The dedication is on the government's calendar and cannot be changed. One problem. The FBI wants to name this gorgeous edifice at the same time in 4 weeks. Everyone said that's impossible. It takes at least 8 months to a year to complete the process through the House, the Senate, and to the President's office. I said, I'm a school principal. And I said, excuse my French. Oh, hell no. We're gonna get this done. Immediately, I went to an attack mode. I went to the speaker, Speaker Boehner, and I said, Mr. Speaker, I need your help. The FBI needs your help, and our country needs your help, and we have no time to waste. He went into attack mode, and in 2 days, pulled it out of committee, brought it to the floor for a vote. Representative Cobell and I presented it. We all voted, and I dashed it over to the Senate and put our senators on notice. Put it on your radar. Senator Nelson and Senator Rubio, who I believe have representatives here today. They hotlined it to the Senate floor in just 2 days. And guess what? The president signed the bill into law this past Tuesday, April 7th, 2015, with a bang, bang, bang. You know what? I will be presenting a bill, a copy of the bill that was signed into law to the FBI, and also the pens that the president used to sign that hallowed document. It is a miracle, to say the least, but it speaks to the respect that our Congress has for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the men and women who put their lives on the line every single day. And today we're providing a boost to our nation by naming this fantastic building in honor of Special Agents Benjamin B. Grogan and Jerry L. Dove, who died valiantly on Friday, April 11th, and what is still considered the bloodiest gun battle in the storied history of the FBI. Most men and women in law enforcement leave their homes for work knowing that there is a possibility they may not return. If I may, will all men and women and first responders who work in law enforcement stand up and down so that we can applaud you and what you do. Stand up. We are proud of you. We're proud of your courage. Thank you.
Okay, he just lied. He just lied because he works for Satan.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Yeah, you could buy tile at a chain store if you wanted to. You could wait for a kid to try and answer your questions about what's this made of, or how do I install it, or what's in stock. But what if you wanted serious craftsmanship? What if you wanted custom design, handmade, to order from your imagination, or an inspiration photo that you love? Probably you think you can't anymore, but I did. When it was time to shop tile, I came across a family-owned business that still handcrafts each and every individual tile, matching your colors, your inspiration, your design. Tempest Tile Works. They're based in Portland, Oregon, and they still handcraft the most magnificent tile. Let them match to your fabrics or to your countertops or to anything you can envision for your bath or kitchen. Teeny tiny tiles to oversized, their art or yours. It's all doable, it's all affordable, and it's all individually made just for your project. Visit Tempest Tile Works and look at their amazing gallery of designs and styles and give up the chain stores. Tempest Tile Works, custom made. TempestTileWorks.com.
Hey guys, it's Scotty, Randi's producer here, and as many of you know, I grew up in Randi's house. You know, eating her food, watching her TV, and like most kids, ignorantly not following her advice. And one of her biggest pieces of advice was, never take a job in radio, because the big companies that run radio, they suck. Well, I didn't listen and ended up working in radio, and as always, Randi was right, they sucked. But I'm here now, and I can tell you that it takes a lot of chutzpah to break away from the big companies and start your own show. But you know what else it takes? Your support. We are independent media, so the only financial backers we have are you, the best listeners in the world. And we can't do it without you. So please go to randyrhodes.com and support the show, buy a stinking podcast, donate some money, and keep us going.
This is the voice of the resistance. You're listening to the Progressive Voices Network.
Dear fellow progressive, these are the times that try men's souls. It is not the first time our country has been in peril, and it won't be the last. It is, however, a unique threat from within, one the precise likes of which we have never seen before. It is our modern media mix that has enabled an incurious, unserious, pathological liar and textbook narcissist to accede to the highest office in the land. His is a world of make-believe, one that could only have been concocted by a student of reality TV. At least we know he studied something. The imagined slights, the trumped-up, pun intended, feuds, the insulting nicknames, the Twitter diarrhea, it is all of a piece. Entertaining, funny even in another context, but when you're busy blowing up the country's longest-running foreign relationships, devastating the environment, threatening trade wars, and embracing all the wrong actors, it's really hard to find the humor. At Progressive Voices, we take holding the powerful accountable as our most serious mission, and there is nothing more important to us today than making sure the PV audience is informed with unbiased information and that more and more people become part of our audience, and therefore are better informed than they can be by relying solely on the mainstream media, which, in so many ways, has shrunk from its duty as the watchdog of democracy. It is our sincere hope that you will help us in this important mission at this most critical hour. Go to progressivevoices.com and make your donation today. Please give whatever you can. Remember, we are a tax-exempt 501c3, meaning that your donations are fully tax-deductible. Thanks for supporting the Progressive Voices Network.
Hi, it's Randi Rhodes. Listen to me on the PV live stream or on demand or both on the PV app. Just go to progressivevoices.com or download the Progressive Voices app.
All things Randi at randyrhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
General Kelly said he was stunned that Representative Wilson made comments at a building dedication honoring slain FBI agents about her own actions in Congress, including lobbying former President Obama on legislation. As General Kelly pointed out, if you're able to make a sacred act like honoring American heroes all about yourself, you're an empty barrel. If you don't understand that reference, I'll put it a little more simply. As we say in the South, all hat, no cattle.
Well, in fact, have you seen the speech?
I have.
And then you know that most of it was her effusively praising these FBI agents. And when she was talking about what she did in Congress, she was not talking about securing the $20 million. She was talking about naming the building for these FBI agents, who she then went on to effusively praise. And that was the bulk of the speech.
She also mentioned that, and she also had quite a few comments that day that weren't part of that speech and weren't part of that video that were also witnessed by many people that were there. What General Kelly referenced yesterday.
Tell us specifically, because
exactly what he said. There was a lot of grandstanding. He was stunned that she had taken that opportunity to make it about herself.
Can he come out here and talk to us about this at some point?
I think he's addressed that pretty thoroughly yesterday.
No, he was wrong yesterday in talking about getting the money. The money was
if you want to go after General Kelly, that's up to you. But I think that if you want to get into a debate with a 4-star Marine general, I think that's something highly inappropriate.
It's highly inappropriate to question, the human shield that is John Kelly, who is protecting a narcissist. And I got to tell you, remember I promised you that we were going to find John Gartner, who is the psychologist, the Princeton-educated psychologist, the assistant professor, former assistant professor at Johns Hopkins University, who was the author of, part of the author, one of the 27 psychiatrists called... who wrote this book that made it to the New York Times bestseller list called The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, and started a group called Duty to Warn John Gartner. And we did find him, and it couldn't come at a better time, truly, because I have told you that I have experienced borderline personality disorder narcissist, a narcissist like this. I've seen it from beginning to end, and it doesn't end well. This man ended up being hospitalized for his own protection. But duty to warn is a legal term. Duty to warn is a legal term that applies to psychiatrists and psychologists, and they have a legal obligation to warn if the person they're treating seems like they will hurt themselves or they will become violent to others. And that is why this group is called Duty to Warn. And John Gartner is joining us now. Well, welcome to the show, John.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm excited to talk to you. I was reading the Sunday Times book review, and I saw your book on the bestseller list, and I was like, oh my God.
That's what we said.
Yeah, I mean, it was so appropriate to what I've been thinking. Except that you're a professional. This is what you do. You specialize in this particular thing: borderline personality disorder, sadism, narcissism, and as I said, I've known somebody that suffered from this, and I know that they are contagious. Now, could you explain what I mean by that?
Well, so he is a malignant narcissist, so he has all the symptoms of narcissistic personality, but he also meets full diagnostic criteria for paranoid personality disorder, all his crazy conspiracy theories, his demonization of the press, his demonization of minorities, his demonization of anyone who disagrees with him, like your clip just a moment ago about the congresswoman who exposed his insensitivity. Also antisocial personality disorder, so a complete comfort with lying, and exploiting and violating the rights of others, a lack of remorse or empathy for those people, and as a result, and also sadism, so that they take pleasure in bullying and harming other people. Mm-hmm. And you put those traits together, and you have someone who is very malignant and very destructive, and you're correct, it does not end well. And what I'm concerned about is that right now he is deteriorating. He is actually getting worse. And actually, we predicted this because this is what malignant narcissists typically do. When they do get power, instead of pivoting and becoming more presidential, they actually become more extreme. They become more extreme in their grandiosity, more extreme in their paranoia, more extreme in their reckless, destructive behavior. Combined with that, I think he's having some organic brain deterioration. His vocabulary, his capacity to think and reason is much diminished from what it once was, which also puts him in a sort of downward spiral. Now, at this point, I think we are actually facing the greatest psychiatric emergency in American history, maybe in world history, because we are now getting cries of alarm from the Republican Party
right,
and from the White House. So this is no longer a partisan issue. It's Bob Corker, has said that he's unstable.
Yes.
He's putting us on the path to World War III. And that with a few exceptions, the majority of his caucus agrees with him. That is a whistleblower. What he is saying is the majority of Republicans believe that he is mentally unfit, disordered, and dangerous.
They
and
have
people
said
in the
that.
White House are saying the same thing.
That's right. And what's really interesting is the leaking that is happening is coming from the people in the White House around him. And
it's a cry for help.
Yes, and they are trying to let the Republicans in the Senate know that this man is unstable. He's unraveling. Bob Corker not only said, after Charlottesville that he doesn't have the maturity or, but then went on to say after he said fire and fury about North Korea and all this, that, this man is unraveling. He's unstable. And most everyone knows it. That's what scared me was, Corker didn't stop at, I think he could cause World War III, but most everyone knows it, meaning his Republican colleagues know it. And the amount of chicken crap that goes on, with worrying about Steve Bannon primary and all the whole political part of it is it pales in comparison to the
That's right.
I can't understand. I mean, listen, I was no fan of George Bush. I didn't think he was a smart. I didn't think he was a smart man. I thought he was easily manipulated. I think that he was, good at distorting, information. I think Dick Cheney was kind of borderline evil. And I think that Don Rumsfeld was kind of a sadist too, with the torture and all that stuff. But I never felt that George Bush was anything but being manipulated and kind of on the silly, dumb side. And his brother was probably the smarter of the two. His own mother had said it, but everyone everybody. Nobody reached out to, try and impeach George Bush from the Republican Party.
Right.
And now you
Right.
see Susan Collins getting caught on a hot mic. She's saying, he's crazy, and, I'm afraid of him. I'm worried. You've got, all these Republicans coming forward saying things about he's imploding, he's unraveling, he's unstable, he's, there's something wrong. So you started Duty to Warn, which, as I said, before I brought you on, is a legal term.
Yes.
And it applies to your profession. Why?
Well, it originated with a lawsuit where a patient told his therapist he was going to kill his girlfriend. The therapist didn't warn her, and he killed her. And at that point, it became the law and part of our ethical code in almost every state that it's in the ethical code of every state, but it's actually in the law of most states, that if you have reason to believe or suspect that someone that you're treating could be dangerous to someone, you have to warn that person. Now, people who are very concrete and legalistic like to point out, no, I'm not treating Donald Trump. Therefore, it is not exactly the same duty. But it is the same principle, and it is multiplied by millions and millions of potential victims. I really want your listeners to write this down, okay? Ted Lieu has introduced a bill, House Resolution 669, which would take away from Donald Trump the capacity to launch a first nuclear strike. It would require Congress to authorize a first nuclear strike. Because right now, Donald Trump has got a gun to our head.
Yeah, and I'm not...
To the world's head.
I think, our audience is smarter than the average bear, but I don't know how many people understand, because we haven't really, specifically drilled down on this, but that the President of the United States, all by himself, all alone, can launch a nuclear strike. Other than that,
it's not that much harder. It's not that much harder than his launching a tweet.
It's like that Stephen King novel, Dead Zone. I mean, it's just so creepy. But anyway, I don't know that people understand that the president can do that without Congress.
I think most people do not understand.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that they don't realize how much danger they are truly in.
Yeah.
So our duty to warn, such as it existed when we began this movement. Now it's time to turn the volume up to 10, because now the thing that we're warning about is, I think, actually truly imminent danger. I honestly believe, and I'll explain it sounds dramatic, but I will justify it. I honestly believe that he is far more probable to push the button than not, based on his psychopathology, based on the fact that malignant narcissistic leaders always make war with the full power of their armamentarium, and based on the fact that he is a cornered animal right now with this Mueller investigation. He's guilty of sin. They're closing in on him and his family. And I'm telling you, this guy's going to shoot his way out. And he's going to try to regain the position of power by being the attacker rather than the prosecuted. And he's going to try to distract the country with a war. And he's going to wag the dog kind of phenomenon to distract them from his wrongdoing. So this law could make the difference between whether your grandchildren get to have grandchildren. It's that important. We have to take the gun out of his hands. And that is this. We only need 19 Republicans to vote for it, and we can take the gun out of his hands. They know he's unfit.
Yeah.
They know he's dangerous. They know that the world, life on Earth, hangs in the balance. They know that they should just do the right thing and put that under congressional authority. It's not even an anti-Trump bill. It's not even going to anger his followers. It's just Congress asserting its power against the executive branch and saying, if we have the power to declare war, that means we have the power to declare a first nuclear strike.
Right. Now, there are people in your profession who are pushing back, against what you are doing, which is diagnosing, a person that isn't in your office. And, I looked at the Goldwater rule to see what it was, because I was reading about you. And it turns out that Barry Goldwater was successfully able to sue the American Psychiatric Association because they tried to diagnose him from afar. And so since 1973, there's this principle in your profession that says that you don't diagnose somebody from afar. But, Justin Frank used to be on this show all the time when Bush was... Bush on the couch.
We just had a duty to warn meeting in Washington D.C.
Yeah,
and Justin Frank was one of our speakers.
Oh, how is he? He's such a good, great. Yeah, he's a great man. So he wrote Bush on the Couch, and we discussed some of the complexes Bush had growing up and the daddy thing and all that. But I know what a narcissist is. Unfortunately, I do. And your profession had this conference with like 1,000 professionals there who specialize in this kind of thing, and they were debating it, and they said, oh well, the reason why we have the Goldwater rule is because Barry Goldwater was able to successfully sue us. So it's more of a fear of being sued and a fear of being
cover your ass.
Yeah, and a fear of being punished with reimbursements to
Yes. You read that in the New Yorker.
Yeah,
I'm glad
I
that
did.
was finally exposed.
Yeah.
And I was glad that John Zinner, one of our speakers from Washington, was the one who exposed it. Everyone thinks they're coming from this high and mighty position. In fact, behind closed doors, they said we don't want to antagonize the administration. They might reduce our third-party reimbursement. The APA is a guild organization, and they protect the guild of psychiatry. They do not protect the American public. And if there is a conflict, they will go with the guild every time. They always have.
I know.
Look at their whole history of relationship with Big Pharma. It's one sacrificing the public for their corrupt financial interests and that of the industry they're allied with time and time again. So these are not the people from Mount Sinai to tell us what to do.
Right. I mean, it's one of those doctor's things where no doctor has ever done anything, harmful, even though, you do have, prescriptions being written like crazy by, pain management specialists and all that. So, yeah, I get it. When I figured out that it was a guild and I figured out that, you had this meeting and they actually gave voice to the idea that, our reimbursements will suffer, or, Barry Goldwater was successful in his lawsuit, then it became very clear why they're pushing back against you. But there's another guy that actually disagrees with you. He's probably your biggest critic. He's a guy named
Al Francis.
Yes. Now, he wrote the guidelines for diagnosing narcissistic personality disorder, and he rejects the claim.
But he says he did.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it's the committee. So I have to say this. He's being very narcissistic in even saying that.
Well, I just wanted to share this with you, okay? Because Dr. Francis alleges that unless Trump doesn't believe a word he's saying, then really, he needs to show that he does believe it and he's completely disconnected from reality. That is not my experience with a world heavyweight champion narcissist with borderline personality disorder who literally imploded upon himself and, had delusions and drove from the Midwest to New York City believing that he had a big job that only he could fill, and he was on his way there. And, he actually did do this and then got into a fight with a police officer when he was found sleeping in his car and kicked the police officer who then had him, committed. And he understood that he was in trouble. And the thing was, when the person felt his feelings for the first time, he imploded. He just could not deal with all his feelings. So I disagree with him that he has to believe that he's lying. This guy, I'm telling you, and the
well, look, either way, if he believes the crazy things he's saying, then he has a delusional disorder, which means he is psychotic, which is now a whole other level of severity.
But that was the end. That was the end stage.
Psychotic.
That was a very end stage.
Right. I do believe that he is psychotic. He has what we call transient psychotic symptoms that we see in personality disorders, where they can bend reality to their fantasies and needs. And so he had the biggest crowd size. Because he has to be the best, he has to have had the biggest crowd size. So there is a kind of a delusional quality. But if he were just lying, then he would be an antisocial personality disorder. Either way, he meets criteria for a severe and serious and dangerous disorder.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the idea that, whether we care if he knows he's lying or he's not lying, it doesn't matter to me. He's the president of the United States. He's got a really distorted view of the world. But the thing that makes me believe that he truly is a diagnosable sadist/narcissist/ borderline personality disordered person is the fact that he is contagious, meaning everyone around him. Now you have General John Kelly lying for him and making himself into a liar at the behest of his boss, who is a narcissist. That is exactly the experience that I've seen, where narcissists they have like this lane that they're good in. They're niched out people, and they're very, very good at what they do in their lane. The second they get out of their lane, like for instance, Trump was probably very good at licensing his name. Okay, this is what he's good at, and laundering money. Perhaps he's very good at it, but he's not good. He's not.
Takes a lot of talent to launder money.
I mean, his whole experience with the banks not lending to him. So where did he get his money? That's another subject for a different expert. But the idea that he was very good in his niched out lane, that he had 60 employees, and yet when he talks to the media, he says he hired tens of thousands of people. Right there. I mean, and then he gets out of his lane, and he's now the president of the United States, and he is managing an awesome government, okay? An intelligence community, and a defense community, and a State Department, and a Congress, and a Senate, and all these moving parts. And he's clearly out of his lane and clearly over his head. And yet he can get people who know that to lie for him. That is a very specific thing that...
Right, he is so toxic that everyone around him essentially is sort of like, it's a Midas touch reverse. Like everyone around him, their kind of soul withers. Like they're having their soul sucked out by a Dementor or something in Harry Potter.
Yes, Yes, it is that. It really is that feeling. And these people are turning themselves into gigantic world heavyweight champion liars. And the feeling some have is that John Kelly is doing it because it's his duty to protect us from the bad Donald Trump man. And yet, if John Kelly and the rest of the cabinet would, get real and stop being infected by him, they would invoke the 25th Amendment, okay?
Well, they're the ones who actually have the authority to do that, and we have a petition with 65 that we directed towards mental health professionals with 65,000 signatures that we've sent to every member of the cabinet. Not that that should be their deciding factor, but to make it clear to them that there is professional consensus that this president is truly mentally unfit and dangerous, and that it is their responsibility in seeing that to be the ones to take action under the 25th Amendment. I was actually just meeting with Representative Jamie Raskin earlier this afternoon. Representative Raskin actually spoke at our
you met him today?
In Washington. Yeah, I just came back. In fact, I was worried I was going to be late to speak to you because I hit traffic coming back from Washington. But I was going to have to pull over into like a Wendy's or something. But he's the sponsor of House Resolution 1987, which is an attempt to operationalize the 25th Amendment. That in the situation that there was a serious question of a president's mental capacity, that there would be a bipartisan or nonpartisan commission of psychiatrists, medical doctors, retired politicians from both parties that could really make an objective, consensual assessment of his fitness for office.
Yeah, so Jamie Raskin, for those of you who don't know, he is a Democrat from Maryland, and he has a resolution, 1987, that's right, and he is trying to put up set up a commission of professionals, of psychiatrists, psychologists, of medical professionals to decide whether or not the president is fit, and invoke the 25th Amendment. It's a long shot, but it's an effort. So you know what? I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the trigger for this man? I mean, how much longer before he, decides to lash out?
Yeah. Well, look, I really think that people need to understand, and this is my honest professional assessment, that he is a ticking time bomb. That we are actually living in real life that show 24, where if we can't solve the mystery by, the end of the time period, there's some bombs going to go off in Times Square. He is a ticking time bomb. I think people really need to understand not only that he has the capacity to launch on a whim, but he is sick enough to do it. And in fact, so sick that it is actually the type of thing he would do. And he's deteriorating, and he's under stress from an investigation which is essentially fatal to him, his administration, and his family. And I'm telling you, this is a very dangerous combination. And talk about things not ending well. We really need to take the gun out of his hands. We need to take the nuclear missiles out of his hands. It could be the last thing we ever do if we don't succeed in doing this.
I will make sure that each and every person who is listening, every single person who is in our chat room, every single person who is listening on a podcast, that they all call their Congress member and they all call their senator, and that they ask to please take the nuclear option away from the president and put it back to, not back,
Thank you.
Give it to Congress.
Yes.
All right, the book is called The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. One of the authors, John Gartner, also has a group that you can join, that you can watch, that you can, get updates from, called Duty to Warn. And, of course, they are trying to get a commission set up to get Congress to start thinking about invoking the 25th Amendment. Listen, I'm so glad you didn't have to do this from a Wendy's. Thank you for taking your time. I look forward to talking to you again in the future. Give Justin Frank my very best.
I will.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Can you believe this?
Clear for Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Hey, I need to tell you something about Herky Jerky, because over the past year, you've been asking me to ask Jason from Herky Jerky if they will ever produce a turkey jerky. Well, I'm proud to tell you that he says absolutely yes. And not only does he have it now, it's absolutely spectacular. Let me start with the taste. It is extremely soft and slightly sweet, and it's bite-sized pieces that taste just like the homemade oven-roasted turkey that you have on Thanksgiving. It's made from turkeys raised without added hormones and just the right amount of salt, natural smoke flavoring, and spices that will make your taste buds go wild. And you asked for healthy. Well, Herky Jerky Turkey Jerky has no nitrates, preservatives, MSG, or artificial ingredients, absolutely zero fat, and packs a whopping 11 grams of protein per serving, and very low in cholesterol. Quite simply, I think this is one of the healthiest and best tasting high protein snacks you can get. Herky Jerky is so excited to announce the new Turkey Jerky that they're offering $5 off all packs for the entire month of October. Just use promo code TURKEY when checking out. And as always, they don't sell the little dinky bags that you get at the gas station. They're 14-ounce zip-sealed packs, and they're meant to last. Herky Jerky, making quality jerky and meat snacks for almost 25 years. Gotta tell you, I believe this is as good as anything I've ever tasted and the best thing they've ever produced. Try some today, herkyjerky.com.
Hey everybody, it's Brett from the Randi Rhodes Show. It's Friday, and that's payday, which doesn't happen without you. I've got a taste of the good life, and now I've got addictions that need to continue. A man's got to eat, and he can't eat without your support. So help Randi support me. Go to randirhodes.com/support, and everybody gets fed.
Hello, Progressive Voices tune-in listeners. I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week.
I happened to read in my hometown newspaper that said that people were expected to drive from literally hundreds of miles away, and that they were expecting thousands of people to come to this Wise County Fairgrounds to get free care. And when I got there, I saw people who could have been people I grew up with, could have been relatives of mine, could have been me. People were lined up by the hundreds, waiting in these long, long, long lines that I noticed led to barns and animal stalls where they were being treated by doctors and nurses and dentists who were volunteering their time. And I knew the moment I walked through the fairground gates that I was at least partly responsible for that scene, because I was working to perpetuate a very broken, very dysfunctional healthcare system that made it impossible for so many people, including those people who were there, to get care in a proper setting and care that they could afford. So soon after that, I turned in my resignation and started a new life. And what I came to obviously realized was that that's what I was being paid to do in my corporate job, working for these health insurance companies. I was paid to present a world that wasn't real and to make people believe things that weren't true. Often it was various things that we did to essentially spread propaganda about how the health insurance system really works, or to scare people away from any alternatives to the multi-payer system that we have. So I really had an epiphany.
I'm so glad that you had the courage to take that look, and then after taking that honest look, then making the leap to do something completely different.
People need to be more involved in making positive change happen, and how the health insurance system really affects them.
Check out our show at nursetalksite.com and listen every Saturday and Sunday right here on Progressive Voices.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
He's brought us to the brink of nuclear war, obstructed justice at the FBI, and in direct violation of the Constitution, he's taken money from foreign governments and threatened to shut down news organizations that report the truth. If that isn't a case for impeaching and removing a dangerous president, then what has our government become? I'm Tom Steyer, and like you, I'm a citizen who knows it's up to us to do something. It's why I'm funding this effort to raise our voices together and demand that elected officials take a stand on impeachment. A Republican Congress once impeached a president for far less. Yet today, people in Congress and his own administration know that this president is a clear and present danger, who's mentally unstable and armed with nuclear weapons. And they do nothing. Join us and tell your member of Congress that they have a moral responsibility to stop doing what's political and start doing what's right. Our country depends on it.
Wow, that's Tom Steyer. He's a billionaire, and he is scared to death of Donald Trump. And so is the entire psychiatric profession. And so are, people who live in South Korea. And so are people who live in Guam. Because, Puerto Rico, he gave himself a 10. Did you hear this yesterday? Oh my, you talk about grandiosity and delusions of things that you've accomplished that have not happened. I mean, I don't know what people are waiting for at this point. And by people, I mean Congress. I don't understand, if all of this is for a little bit of a tax cut for the very, very wealthy, then just get it over with and then impeach him. I mean, or let it fail and then impeach him, because quite frankly, the blowback on you will be enormous by him. This man will not have your back. This whole crazy thing with the tax cuts. I mean, it seems to me that Congress is waiting to actually talk about how dangerous this man truly is, how mentally unfit, how mentally unstable, how he's unraveling, how this is not his wheelhouse, and he's flailing because he is a narcissist, and he needs to believe that everything he touches turns to success and winning. And, he can't do this job. You understand he can't do it. He's not been doing it. Today is the 9th anniversary of his presidency, and he's accomplished absolutely nothing. Nothing. And he knows it. And the sense of failure, a narcissist cannot process that. And so they become delusional, and they start creating in their mind this idea that they're doing great, even though they're doing nothing except crapping on all the people around them by blaming them for any slight that he perceives. It's a very sick thing, but it is a mental disorder. John Gartner, who is a psychologist, like I said, he taught it, okay, at Johns Hopkins, one of the best medical schools in the United States, who went to Princeton to study this. He specializes in this. He specializes in borderline personality disorder, narcissism, and sadism. And this man is all of those things. He enjoys hurting people. It gives him pleasure. He feels dominant. He feels, important. He feels, he's accomplishing something by belittling you. It's how he makes himself bigger, is by belittling you. And a man who has to make you small to feel big is not a big man. He's not a real man. All right. And everybody around him gets this. It's really, really upsetting. But yesterday he sat there. Puerto Rico is in such shards. I mean, it's a shred. It's a shred of an island. You have almost 80% of the island with no electricity. You have a million people without clean drinking water, and it's been a month. It's been a month. And he sat there yesterday with the governor of Puerto Rico and tried to make the governor of Puerto Rico defend him, tried to make this guy say he was doing a 10 out of 10, that he's the best ever. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. This was the biggest storm ever, and I was so good. We did a fabulous job. I'm giving myself a 10 out of 10.
I think it was worse than Katrina. It was, in many ways, worse than anything people have ever seen. They got hit.
Okay, remember he said that Katrina was a real disaster and that this wasn't. Remember? Now all of a sudden he has decided that he would say that it's worse than Katrina and that it's the biggest ever, and so that makes him even grander.
Worse than Katrina. It was, in many ways, worse than anything people have ever seen. They got hit by a Category 4, grazed but grazed about, a big portion of the island. But it was grazed. The rest of it hit Florida, as you know. But that was bad. But then they got hit dead center. If you look at those maps by a Category 5, nobody's ever heard of a 5 hitting land. Usually by that time it's dissipated. It hit right through and kept to a 5. It hit right through the middle of the island, right through the middle of Puerto Rico. There's never been anything like that. I give ourselves a 10. I think that locally I really think locally they have, in this gentleman, great leadership. I have to tell you, it's a tough job.
To kiss your ass? Yeah, it is.
Provided so much, so fast.
Oh my
we were
God.
actually there before the storm hit. We were there before the first one, before the Category 4 hit. Brock and the military and a lot of people were there before the storm. We had the Coast Guard waiting for the storm, just outside the storm, and following the storm in. Many lives saved. The Coast Guard in Texas saved 16,000 lives. The Coast Guard is incredible, the job they've done. But all of the armed forces, what they've done has been Army, Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, all of the goods dropped in, helicopters that weren't even meant for this purpose. All of a sudden, they're delivering food and services. I would give it 10.
This is a very sick man, okay? Anybody who served in the military, you know that this is what you do in emergencies. We have reservists that states want to send. We have military personnel who are volunteering to go on their own dime. We have people that are just sending 10 plane loads of things because this man did not respond. You have the USS Comfort, which is a hospital ship, sitting there. It didn't get there for, like a week and a half, and now it's sitting there completely empty. He has blamed the Puerto Ricans themselves for not distributing the water properly. He has blamed the people who are the actual victims of this for being the victims of this. He has blamed the mayor of San Juan. He has blamed it. And he sits there and says, I give myself a 10. I give myself a 10.
I would say locally, and I understand locally, a person loses his or her or their house, and then they can't go to work. If you lose your house, it's hard to go and be a policeman for the day. You're trying to have your family, live, frankly. This is what happens.
This is what happens, but he says that the reason why they weren't delivering the goods is because the truck drivers would not go to work. Now he's sitting with the governor, and he changes his story.
And so many people. You read that they had no truck drivers in Puerto Rico. Well, they have a lot of truck drivers in Puerto Rico, but many of them lost their houses, so they had to be with their families. So we would have the military driving trucks. They're not supposed to be driving trucks.
There are entire transportation units that do nothing but drive trucks. In fact, Sergeant LaDavid Johnson was a driver. That's what he was. That's why he was in Niger. He was a driver. We have entire transportation units. That's all they do is drive trucks. We have, helicopters that drop goods. I was a cargo. I worked on cargo airplanes, okay? We had to practice cargo drops, and the cargo could be anything from pallets of water to pallets of MREs to pallets of mail to medevac, medical equipment to personnel. People practice dropping things to places that are remote and difficult to get to. How do you think we fought in the thick jungles of Vietnam? How do you think we supply our troops in the middle of a freaking mountainous Afghanistan? How do you think we supply our troops in deserts in Iraq and the Middle East? I mean, this man is so clueless. And it's not that he doesn't know. It's that he wants you to think a certain thing and become infected with his delusions of grandeur about him. And for some people, like a third of this country, he has infected them. That is what the two past presidents were giving speeches about yesterday. That is the exact word that George W. Bush used, that our politics have been infected with cruelty. both past presidents invoked the word cruelty. People get this. Smart people get this. People who have been around presidents get this. People who have been around government, they get this man is unfit.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
This is nothing more than a big oil polar payout.
Alaska National Wildlife Refuge on the chopping block again.
Don't clean up right now. It's not safe.
California officials warn of toxic ash from the state's devastating wildfires. Like Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands struggling without power or clean water. Plus, Shell Oil opens up electric vehicle chargers at its gas stations in Britain.
All of those struggles and irony straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
I'm against war, except in cases of national security, or if we need oil, or if, we feel like having a war. Besides that,
this is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, encouraging news for the most part this week coming out of California and those devastating wildfires.
Yes, firefighters continue to gain ground against those deadly Northern California wine country wildfires. Now officials are warning returning residents to not sift through what remains of their homes because of toxins in the ash from burned plastics, electronics, household pesticides, and other pollutants. That's according to Sonoma County Public Health official Scott Alonzo here in an interview with CBS News.
Don't clean up right now. It's not safe. The toxic ash and the debris is harmful. We don't want you sifting through it. We don't want children in it. Do not touch it.
And that's a lot of people that he's saying that to. Some 6,000 houses and commercial structures were leveled.
Yes, and when it rains, those toxins will be washed into the watershed.
And some rain is predicted for this week. Good news for the fires, bad news for the water drinkers.
Meanwhile, the plight of the battered U.S. Virgin Islands has fallen off the media's radar, much like the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Puerto Rico after catastrophic back-to-back hurricanes. Some power has been restored to St. Thomas, but local media confirms cases of bacterial diseases caused by contaminated water. On Wednesday, officials on St. John tweeted that their island has been 100% without electricity for more than 40 days. Infrastructure and economic losses are estimated to be more than $5 billion for both islands, but the current disaster relief package in Congress offers only a $5 billion loan for both Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands for rebuilding.
And, of course, Donald Trump recently said he met the president of the Virgin Islands when it turns out that Donald Trump is the president of the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Sad but true. Meanwhile, for nearly 30 years, Republicans in Congress have tried to open up the public's pristine Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil and gas drilling. And this time, they may succeed by tying it to a must-pass budget resolution, which, under Senate rules, only needs 51 votes to pass. Republicans want to open the refuge to drilling to raise revenue to offset their proposed $1.5 trillion tax cut. At a Tuesday rally on Capitol Hill to call voters' attention to the Republican scheme, Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts noted the absurdity of the move now that the U.S. is an oil exporter.
So we would be drilling in the Arctic refuge to export to other countries in the world. We would despoil our own sacred land in order to help oil companies sell oil to China.
And this time they may actually get away with it.
But some good news that got lost amid all of the recent disasters. Canadian pipeline company TransCanada has abandoned plans to build two controversial proposed tar sands pipelines, the Energy East and the Eastern Main Line, after Canada's energy regulator implemented tough new requirements for approval. A growing number of proposed pipeline projects are now being canceled due to low oil prices and strong public public opposition.
TransCanada was having problems finding customers for their still proposed Keystone XL pipeline. Any idea if that's moving forward?
They say it is, but we'll see what happens in the long term. In a sharply worded rebuke to the Trump administration, a federal judge recently reinstated Obama-era rules requiring the oil and gas industry to stop methane leaks from drilling operations on public lands, effective immediately. It's estimated the public loses $330 million a year in royalties because of the leaks and intentional flaring on federal lands. That's enough to power about 5 million homes a year.
So it releases dangerous methane into the air and it loses money for the U.S. That's some smart so-called conservatism right there.
Finally, in the wake of recent announcements from Britain, China, and France to phase out conventional gasoline-powered cars by 2040, oil giant Royal Dutch Shell this week opened up the first wave of fast-charging electric vehicle charging stations at gas stations in the UK. Shell also announced it has purchased the electric vehicle charging network company New Motion and its 30,000 private charging stations at homes and offices across Europe.
Yeah, as just about every car maker in the world right now says, we are going electric.
The writing is on the wall.
For much more writing on the wall, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com for those stories and the ones we couldn't get to. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
How's the writings on the wall?
Please help Progressive Voices support the Green News Report by stopping by bradblog.com/donate.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Massive intelligence failure. What more do we know?
So this is coming from my colleague Ken Delanian, who spoke with a senior source on the Hill, who said that there are a lot of questions still, which we know. But one of them is, how is it that the U.S. military, these 12 soldiers, were able to be ambushed by so many militants? How is it possible these militants were able to mass together in a way that they could hit these Americans and these Nigerian forces who were there nearby without them knowing that they were coming, without them knowing that there was a presence of them anywhere in that region? So members of Congress have been more and more outspoken about this. At this point, we still have a lot more questions than we have answers about exactly what happened in this ambush. As you mentioned in the lead-in, an investigative team went in this week. The team includes some technical analysis by FBI investigators who are from the region. This is not uncommon. As we saw in the Marine KC-130 crash in Mississippi in July, FBI specialists went in to help with gathering of technical details and sort of what you would think of as like an NCIS or a criminal investigation. They're gathering evidence, helping the U.S. military with that. So it's not unheard of. But as I said, Craig, we still have a lot more questions than we do have answers about exactly what happened that day that led to 4 U.S. soldiers being killed and 2 more being wounded.
And the president saying nothing about it for 2 weeks. All right. So, everybody is looking for an explanation. Anybody who cares is looking for an explanation about what happened in Niger. We are finding out that there was a giant failure of the intelligence community. The same intelligence community that Donald Trump ignores all the time because he doesn't like what they have to say. There is no doubt in my mind that they will be blamed for this, that these 12 guys who were part of this patrol, these Green Berets, special forces in Africa, were there without the proper cover, were there without any air cover, were there without, any intelligence about what was there or who was there. And, what's really fascinating is you could know who was there because this was not the first attack. There were a series of bloody attacks on military installations in Niger. In February, there was an assault on a town where a dozen soldiers from Niger were killed. Oh my God, Siri is talking to me. See, now if I were delusional, I would think it was Trump trying to, find me. He's home, and that's another thing. These the poor guy, like David Johnson. They found him a mile away from the ambush. Not only did they find him a mile away from the ambush, but they who found him turns out not to be American air support or American helicopters, but either it was a independent defense contractor or it was the French who found him. And yes, our special forces think of it as a life alert, okay? I've fallen and I can't get up. Yeah, I mean, why would you send a soldier out in the middle of nowhere without a life alert, right? And so, of course, he had one, and it had been beeping for so long, hours, which means he was live, and he pressed it, and it was beeping for hours until the battery died. That's how long he was left out there. So he was probably alive, and he was probably taken hostage, and they probably dumped him in the middle of the desert, either to torture him and let him die there, or because they killed him. And who are they? Well, you could know. I mean, I don't know why the press won't, tell you. But this is according to Haaretz, which is an Israeli newspaper. I'll just read it to you so you know it's not coming from me. But the Islamic militants came on motorcycles, toting rocket-propelled grenades and heavy machine guns, and killed 4 American service members after shattering the windows of unarmored U.S. trucks. So we've known this for a couple of days now, that they were in pickup trucks and that all they had was rifles, and that there were 50, call them what you want, terrorists, insurgents. There were 50, and that they were on motorcycles, and that they went undetected, and they were armed with rocket-propelled grenade launchers, and they were armed with automatic weapons. Okay, here's what the article says. In this remote corner of Niger, where the Americans and their local counterparts had been meeting with community leaders, residents say the men who came to kill that day had never been seen there before. Quote, the attackers spoke Arabic and Tamashek, don't know, it's a local dialect, and were light-skinned. Barangay Agali told the Associated Press by phone from the remote village of Tongo Tongo. The terrorists were helped by operational confusion on our part. Niger blocked a U.S. assistance aircraft and French air support, in which the level of coordination between the U.S. and France remains unclear. No extremist group has claimed responsibility for the deadly ambush on October 4th. Today is the 20th. And the languages reportedly spoken by the jihadists are used throughout the Sahel. Now, the Sahel is the Sahara. The ambush of U.S. troops in Niger has become the center of controversy in America, as President Donald Trump is criticized, including by a grieving family, for the way he spoke to the wife of one soldier slain in the operation. Some U.S. lawmakers are also calling for a Benghazi-like investigation. Let me just stop there and insert this. This is me talking. The FBI now has authority to investigate this. The FBI. You know what this reminds me of? You remember the killings in the bombings in Kenya and Tanzania? Also Africa. And then the bombing of the USS Cole? So those things happened in Africa, but they were used in order to get us to go to war in Iraq. Don't forget that. Okay? So we know that we've had this. We know that we have splinter groups in Africa. We know that as people lose territory, and ISIS loses territory, or Al-Qaeda loses territory, or whatever, we know they migrate. We know they migrate, and we know where. We know they migrate to Europe. Some of them are European, and they go back home, and they bring the battlefields back with them, like to London or to Nice, right? And some of them are inspired in Tanzania and in Kenya and others, right? And as they lose territory, like they've been losing, they lost their territory in Mosul in Iraq. They lost their territory in Tikrit in Iraq. They lost their territory in Ramadi in Iraq. And then you saw an increase in European lone wolves who were operating on their own because either they were sympathetic to ISIS or they were fighting with ISIS in Syria, and they lost their territory in Iraq or they lost their territory in Syria, and they go back home and they continue the fight there. Well, the same thing happens here. The same thing happened. And now Syria, they're just about done clearing out Raqqa, and these people are migrating back to where they came from, or they're migrating back to Africa, or people are seeing an opportunity to attack as ISIS loses ground, Al-Qaeda lost ground, right? Okay, just know that. So now back to the article. The Niger attack this is really important. The Niger attack appears to be the work of the Islamic State of the Sahel, a splinter group of extremists loyal to the Islamic State group who are based just across the border in Mali, according to interviews with U.S. officials and authorities in the Sahel region bordering the Sahara Desert. It is led by Adnan Abu Walid, who built ties with various extremists before forming his own group. Don't know why people won't, right? Okay. For several years, American and French forces have provided training and support to the militaries of Mali, Niger, and other African countries where Islamic extremism has become increasingly entrenched over the past decade. CNN reported that one privately contracted aircraft and French military helicopters helped evacuate American forces and the 3 bodies, except there were 4. But details remain unclear if, quote, both parties, meaning the Americans and the French, shared all necessary information related to the operation. The body of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, the fallen Green Beret at the center of the controversy surrounding Trump's comments, was originally left behind in Niger during the confusion and returned to the United States via Miami on Tuesday. Some officials believe Walid's militants are also holding hostage Jeffrey Woodkey, an American abducted in Niger a year ago. Okay, all this we didn't know, and we had no idea. Let me continue, okay? A rebel leader approached by Niger authorities to conduct negotiations for his release confirmed that Walid's group is holding Woodkey, who had spent 25 years as an aid worker in Niger, one of the poorest countries in the world. Now, Walid's militant group is suspected of the attack that killed 4 American soldiers this month. The ambush in Niger highlights how extremist groups have shifted and rebranded since the 2013 French-led military operation ousted them from power in northern Mali. Those extremists lost Mali's northern cities, but regrouped in the desert, including the man suspected of ordering the attacks on Americans. So you see what happens as you take territory away. They move, they shift, they move, they shift, they move, they shift. This is going to happen all over the freaking world. Just know this. Okay. And the idea that we have a president who couldn't know, wouldn't know, left these guys without any intel, where they didn't know this guy was being held hostage, or they didn't know that right over the border where they were, and where they were was right over the border, the Mali border, that, Niger and Mali border each other, and it was right there. Wait, I'm not done. Walid is 38 years old. He's also known in some circles as Adnan al-Sahwari because he descends from Swahili people who are found across southern Morocco, Mauritania, parts of Algeria. He's long been active with extremists in Mali, and at one time he served as the spokesman of the Mali-based group known as Mujao, M-U-J-A-O, that controlled the major northern town of Gao, G-A-O, during the jihadist occupation in 2012. That group was loyal to the regional al-Qaeda affiliate, but Walid parted ways, and in October 2016, a video circulated on the internet in which he pledged allegiance to the Islamic State group in Iraq and Syria appeared. In the years since then, he's called for attacks on foreign tourists in Morocco and the UN mission in the Western Sahara, according to audio messages released in his name. And it's not clear if Walid is receiving financial help from the Islamic State group or if the links are purely ideological. So there's videos. And the UN is aware. It's just very interesting that today the head of the United Nations went to the White House. You know, Donald Trump was very big on trashing the United Nations, just pulled us out of UNESCO, by the way. And now all of a sudden he's got the head of the UN in the Oval Office. Walid's following now includes numerous members of the PAL ethnic group and the Mali-Niger border areas who are active close to where the attack on the U.S. soldiers took place. Before the attack on the U.S. troops in Niger, Walid's followers are believed to have staged a series of bloody attacks. On military installations in Niger. Oh, nobody could know, right? In February, they were blamed for an assault in Tilwa where a dozen Niger soldiers were killed. Walid's Islamic State in the Sahel does not yet pose a threat as great as al-Qaeda, though the shift with time could come with time, said Ibrahim Niger with the Institute for Security Studies in Bamako. Walid clearly appears to have learned from his former colleagues on how to infiltrate and influence locals. He has succeeded in creating links with local people despite the fact that he is a stranger to the area. Now, here's the real kicker, okay? The growing threat posed by Walid's group comes as the international community is already facing an escalation in violence across the Sahel. A report by the UN chief, who went to the White House today, obtained this week, warned that the security situation in the Sahel is, quote, in a continuous downward spiral. The UN is urging the international community to finance a 5,000-strong regional force, with the head of the UN saying, quote, the stability of the entire region and beyond is in jeopardy. The 12,000-strong UN peacekeeping mission in Mali has become the most dangerous in the world as Islamic militants routinely attack UN convoys. And the future of the regional security force known as the G5 Sahel multinational force made up of Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, and Niger appears to be in jeopardy. Why? Oh, for you Vietnam vets and Vietnam historians, this is going to really rub you the wrong way. France, the former colonizer, which has a 5,000-strong military operation to help stabilize the region, has been a major financial backer, although their funding has come up short. So the UN Security Council unanimously adopted a resolution back in June, it's now October, welcoming the deployment, but at U.S. insistence, did not include any possibility of UN financing for this force. So far, only a quarter of the needed funds have been raised, throwing into doubt whether the regional forces will begin operating this month as planned. This man, with his threats to NATO, with his threats to the United Nations, with his withholding of funding, with his, caused this. They knew this. There had been repeated attacks on military installations in Niger. They were near the Mali border. The United Nations had issued a report saying clearly that there was this new splinter group that was active, operating, attacking military outposts, attacking military installations, and none of these soldiers got any of this intel. What actually happened in Niger was a convoy, a decoy of a few motorcycle riders, pretended to be locals and lured these guys into an ambush. That is what happened. And it's a massive intelligence failure because the intelligence was out there. The UN had it. The French had it. They were begging the United States for money to help finance a 5,000 strong force, and the U.S. said no.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Yeah, you could buy tile at a chain store if you wanted to. You could wait for a kid to try and answer your questions about what's this made of, or how do I install it, or what's in stock. But what if you wanted serious craftsmanship? What if you wanted custom design, handmade, to order from your imagination, or an inspiration photo that you love? Probably you think you can't anymore, but I did. When it was time to shop tile, I came across a family-owned business that still handcrafts each and every individual tile, matching your colors, your inspiration, your design. Tempest Tile Works. They're based in Portland, Oregon, and they still handcraft the most magnificent tile. Let them match to your fabrics, or to your countertops, or to anything you can envision for your bath or kitchen. Teeny tiny tiles to oversized, their art or yours. It's all doable, it's all affordable, and it's all individually made just for your project. Visit Tempest Tile Works and look at their amazing gallery of designs and styles, and give up the chain stores. Tempest Tile Works, custom made. TempestTileWorks.com.
Hey guys, it's Scotty, Randi's producer here, and as many of you know, I grew up in Randi's house. Eating her food, watching her TV, and like most kids, ignorantly not following her advice. And one of her biggest pieces of advice was, never take a job in radio, because the big companies that run radio, they suck. Well, I didn't listen and ended up working in radio, and as always, Randi was right, they sucked. But I'm here now, and I can tell you that it takes a lot of chutzpah to break away from the big companies and start your own show. But you know what else it takes? Your support. We are independent media, so the only financial backers we have are you, the best listeners in the world. And we can't do it without you. So please, go to RandiRhodes.com and support the show, buy a stinking podcast, donate some money, and keep us going.
This is the voice of the resistance. You're listening to the Progressive Voices Network.
This is Ezra Levin, Executive Director of Indivisible. Please go to indivisibleguide.com, type in your zip code, find your local Indivisible group, and join the movement to resist Trump's agenda. We've teamed up with Progressive Voices Network to help your community take action and hold Congress accountable.
Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. President Barack Obama. We wrote this guide because we believe that the coming years will see an unprecedented movement of Americans rising up across the country to protect our values, our neighbors, and ourselves. Our goal is to provide a practical understanding of how your members of Congress think, and how you can demonstrate to them the depth and power of the opposition to Donald Trump and the Republican congressional overreach. This is not a panacea, nor is it intended to stand alone. We strongly urge you to marry the strategy in this guide with a broader commitment to creating a more just society, building local power, and addressing systemic injustice and racism.
Take action and hold Congress accountable. This is Ezra Levin on the Progressive Voices Network, asking you to join the millions who decided to become part of the movement to resist Trump's agenda. Check out indivisibleguide.com to start resisting on your home turf. Keep listening for more ways you can get involved.
This is the voice of the resistance. You're listening to the Progressive Voices Network.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Okay, this is very sick. Listen to this. This just happened. This is Lindsey Graham commenting.
The counterterrorism rules under President Obama, I thought, were overly restricted. They denied us the ability to basically engage the enemy effectively and aggressively. The war is morphing. You're going to see more actions in Africa, not less.
Oh, Jesus.
You're going to see more aggression by the United States toward our enemies, not less.
Oh, my God.
You're going to have decisions being made not in the White House, but out in the field. And I support that entire construct.
Probably had never heard of Niger until they found out 4 Americans had died there. Is that appropriate? And are we overextended if we're at the point where Americans are literally dying in countries that most people have never heard of?
It's not whether you can pass a geography test. It's whether or not the threat exists. I think most Americans want to do the following. Where the threats are us and our allies that want us to deal with it. They don't want another 9/11. We don't want the next 9/11 to come from Niger. When you look at the number of forces on the ground compared to indigenous forces and other allies, pretty good return on investment. These are not massive deployments. But I would like to know, are there 1,000 soldiers in Niger? What are they doing? And if we don't like what they're doing, then we would cease funding the 1,000 in Niger.
You already
That's
did.
the way the system works. To the American people, the war is headed to Africa. It's beginning to morph. As we suppress the enemy in the Mideast, they're going to move. They're not going to quit. So President Obama set up a presence there. Yemen, there is no government to work with. The general idea is that we're not going into a country unless we're invited. We're not going to do anything unless they buy into what we're doing, and we're there to help them as well as protect us. But Yemen's a classic example of where you got AQAP, Al-Qaeda in the midst of the Houthi. It's basically a war between Saudi Arabia and Iran, proxy war. But in the middle of that, there are radical extremists that want to hit the United States. So I like where they're going, and I think we will be better served if we get this system that Senator McCain's been demanding in place.
President Trump has gone up for air there. What would you recommend that they do in this situation?
Number one, you'll never convince me that President Trump doesn't grieve when somebody falls in the line of duty on his watch. Same for President Obama. I know President Obama and Michelle Obama really spent a lot of time with the families of the fallen and the injured, and I've seen President Trump in action. He goes out of his way to meet a military member. There was an artful communication of what General Kelly was trying to explain to President Trump, then correct that problem. Quite frankly, I am ready to move on. I am so sorry these 4 men died in operations, but I will say this about the operations, and I can't give you the details. They died in the defense of America. This war is getting hot in places where it's been cool, and we got to go where the enemy takes us.
We got to go where the enemy takes us, and we have to go there. I got news for you. All the hot spots in the world. Tanzania was one where we were bombed. Okay, Kenya was one where we were bombed. Maybe some of you are old enough to remember Beirut, Lebanon, where 254 Marines were killed in their barracks by terror. You know what Reagan did when the Marine barracks were bombed in Lebanon? We left Lebanon. That's what we freaking did. Okay. Yemen has no government, and it is a civil war, and it's a proxy war between the Sunnis in Saudi and the Shia in Iran. Okay. And I know people still to this day don't understand the difference between the sects. And I don't mean SEX, I mean SECT. Okay. They don't understand. There is no government. There is no government in Niger either. These are all places that were colonized, just like Vietnam was colonized. And people fight back against these occupying forces, even if it takes them a lifetime. You know, you look at Vietnam, we sent advisors, just like these guys, okay? They were Green Berets, they were Special Force, whatever. You know, we send them there, we train the military to keep these European governments in power in places they have no business being in power. They take land away from native people. They take land away from, the Vietnamese. They took land away from the Africans. Why do you think these African nations have European accents? Some of them have French accents. Some of them have English accents. It's all colonization, okay? The idea that there is no government there. So there's no one to negotiate with there. And I'm telling you, the United Nations knew about this problem. They had seen other attacks there on, local forces. I guess you call them Nigerians, because even though there is a country called Nigeria, and this is Niger, and it's pronounced that way because it's a French colony. There's no government there, but the UN knew. Believe me.
Believe me.
These guys were sent in blind by this, I mean, we had a commander there until June. It looks like everything fell apart in June. That's when the attacks were. The bloody attacks on the military installations in Niger. They were in June. We lost the commander of Africa Command in June. And it just looks like Trump didn't, really care. It's like the State Department. There's no one there. They have gutted it. The United Nations, they knew about this. This president trashed the United Nations. He doesn't like multilateral, multinational, didn't even respect Article 5 in NATO, okay? This guy wants to be some sort of cowboy, some sort of hero, some sort of only I can do it. This is what he told you. He's a demagogue. Everyone knew except the people who needed to know, which were the Green Berets on the ground. They had no air cover. General Thomas Waldhauser, who was the commander of AFRICOM since 2016, he told Congress in March, that only 20% of AFRICOM's needs for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance was being met. The Marine Corps general said, and this is what kills me about Kelly, he's a Marine Corps 4-star, okay? Who went along with all this madness this whole time and now is infected by Donald Trump. He's literally infected by him to the point where he's lying for him. He's covering for him. He's becoming a human shield for him because Kelly thinks that's what a good soldier does for the commander-in-chief. That's why he walked in Arlington, to look inside himself and figure out, what does a good soldier do? He defends the commander-in-chief to the ends of the earth. And now they're talking about us taking on this mission instead of putting the money where it was supposed to be back in June with the United Nations and a multilateral, multinational, cooperative effort, just like we did in Tanzania, just like we did in Kenya. No, they want it. Now the war is morphing, and now we're going to go to Africa. We're going to bomb North Korea, then we're going to go to Africa. I mean, this is insanity. This is crazy. And the same rules apply. If you can't win over the locals, and the reason why nobody, the locals knew about these 50 guys. There is no way in a little village in a desert town on the border of Niger and Mali, look it up, didn't know that they had 50 guys on motorcycles with rocket-propelled grenade launchers ready to attack U.S. and Nigerian forces. They didn't say anything because they didn't believe that the Nigerian forces were backed up enough to protect them from what was already in their towns. They didn't believe that the Nigerian forces were able to give them protection. So they stayed quiet, or they cooperated with this Walid dude, with this jihadist. There are newspaper articles out there, my friends. There are. Not that you would know that there are from watching anything on Fox News, which, by the way, got popped so hard this week. Fake. Oh, my God. Okay. So you got all this lying going on, which is really, really a disservice to everybody in this country who needs to understand what happened and what's happening to all of our multinational, multilateral agreements and the cooperation it takes all over the world to sort out and to rout out these pockets of nutbags that attack American installations, that attack American, but people were only interested in Benghazi, which, is also in Africa. Hate to tell you, Libya is in North Africa. I've actually been on the border of Libya. I've actually stood there. The Mediterranean is nice, but the desert is like freaky. I was never so scared as and I wasn't really scared because I don't scare easily, but it was creepy being next to Libya. I was in Tunisia, and it was creepy. I mean, you just felt like a little blue-eyed blonde girl, trying to buy a rug, which is what I was doing. Somehow looked like kidnap bait. You just could feel it. You could feel it. But honest to God, man, there is no substitute for multinational, multilateral cooperation by other democracies who have ruined these countries, literally ruined them. They must make it right. They need to get the hell out of there. They need to rout out these terrorists. They need to come to an agreement with the local population about what kind of government, after all, these people really hope and dream of. What do they want for themselves, and give it to them. This whole idea of picking people's governments and then overthrowing these governments when they aren't your beck and call girl, and the colonization that went on, and all of this has got to end once and for all, and this president has no clue about anything I just said.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Hey, I need to tell you something about Herky Jerky, because over the past year, you've been asking me to ask Jason from Herky Jerky if they will ever produce a turkey jerky. Well, I'm proud to tell you that he says absolutely yes. And not only does he have it now, it's absolutely spectacular. Let me start with the taste. It is extremely soft and slightly sweet, and it's bite-sized pieces that taste just like the homemade oven-roasted turkey that you have on Thanksgiving. It's made from turkeys raised without added hormones and just the right amount of salt, natural smoke flavoring, and spices that will make your taste buds go wild. And you asked for healthy. Well, Herky Jerky Turkey Jerky has no nitrates, preservatives, MSG, or artificial ingredients, absolutely zero fat, and packs a whopping 11 grams of protein per serving, and very low in cholesterol. Quite simply, I think this is one of the healthiest and best tasting high protein snacks you can get. Herky Jerky is so excited to announce the new Turkey Jerky that they're offering $5 off all packs for the entire month of October. Just use promo code TURKEY when checking out. And as always, they don't sell the little dinky bags that you get at the gas station. They're 14-ounce zip-sealed packs, and they're meant to last. Herky Jerky, making quality jerky and meat snacks for almost 25 years. Gotta tell you, I believe this is as good as anything I've ever tasted and the best thing they've ever produced. Try some today, herkyjerky.com.
Hey everybody, it's Brett from the Randi Rhodes Show. It's Friday, and that's payday, which doesn't happen without you. I've got a taste of the good life, and now I've got addictions that need to continue. A man's got to eat, and he can't eat without your support. So help Randi support me. Go to randyrhodes.com/support, and everybody gets fed.
Listen to She Persisted with Melissa Carter weekdays at 8 a.m. on the Progressive Voices 24/7 live stream, or listen when you want on demand at progressivevoices.com or on the PV app. Download the PV app now in the app and Android stores.
So let's see. There's still no female president. You make half of what men make, yet somehow you are still expected to take care of most everything at the home too. And ladies, you're beautiful. But on a daily basis, you look in the mirror in disgust at how you look. It is time to start a new routine. And I hope that you will listen to my new show, She Persisted, here on the Progressive Voices Network. My name is Melissa Carter. I will be your host, and I have been a media personality for over 20 years. I also came out on the air long before Ellen did, and as a single mom and a kidney transplant recipient, I have been through some shit. Nevertheless, I persisted, and I know you have too. So let's talk about what we've accomplished, and together we can learn to take it from She Persisted to She Thrived. It's She Persisted at 8 a.m. on the East on the Progressive Voices Network and on demand on the Progressive Voices app. I certainly hope you'll join me.
Melissa Carter hosts She Persisted weekdays at 8 a.m. on the Progressive Voices 24/7 live stream, or when you want on demand at progressivevoices.com or on the PV app. Download the PV app now in the app and Android stores. Thanks for listening to the Progressive Voices Network, streaming the best in progressive talk 24/7. Keep the progressive conversation going on Facebook. Like us at facebook.com/progressive voices. On the Progressive Voices Facebook page, we update the stories that our hosts like Tom Hartman, Stephanie Miller, and Leslie Marshall will be talking about during their shows. And we share great news, commentaries, opinion pieces, and videos from all over the progressive world. Always progressive, always on. Be part of the progressive conversation. Like us at facebook.com/progressive voices.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I want to show you something. This is completely and utterly fake news. Watch this.
Well, he was one of our nation's first Navy SEALs with a special talent and is coming out of semi-retirement for President Trump. You know, after John Garofalo served his country, he taught himself the art of glass carving. And the two-time Purple Heart recipient would later give his first glass presidential seal to President Reagan himself. Now, he hopes to honor the current occupant of the Oval Office. Brian Yennis is live here in New York City with more on this inspiring story. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Eric. Well, John Garofalo says he knew President Trump would win the moment he announced his campaign. He kept the faith, and despite health issues, the veteran worked tirelessly to create a gift for a man that's given him hope.
The man, he woke something up in me. He's for the people.
John Garofalo believes in President Trump, so much so he created this hand-cut, 4-foot, 150-pound glass and bronze presidential seal of the United States as a gift for the president.
A lot of love went into that, you know, of the country and the people, the soldiers, the president.
This isn't the first seal he made. The 72-year-old has been carving glass for 44 years. In fact, he gifted two for President George H.W. Bush and President Ronald Reagan.
Why, Reagan, he put the pride back into the servicemen.
Garofalo says after 24 years, he was inspired to make his best seal yet for Trump.
I have hope for him, and I have hope for the country.
Carving glass and bronze can take months of painstaking work. It begins with a simple drawing and then ends with Garofalo suited up and carving his art.
One mistake, the piece is gone.
Garofalo is used to working under pressure. The Vietnam War veteran served 7 years and was a member of the nation's first Navy SEAL team. He was awarded 22 commendations, including 2 Purple Hearts. You are a hero, but like most heroes,
I don't like to hear that.
You don't like to hear it. Why don't you like to hear it?
Heroes are the ones that didn't come home.
Except he's not a Navy SEAL, never was a Navy SEAL, didn't get 2 Purple Hearts, didn't do 7 years, in the service, and never got any commendations at all. That is completely and utterly fake news. This man was in Japan during Vietnam. He never set foot in Vietnam. He never saw combat. He never fought anybody. He never did any of the things that Fox News said he did. And he was sitting there. And Fox, by the way, that got, when they posted, Fox News posted that on Facebook, it got 1.5 million views. And it's completely and utterly fabricated. This man did none of those things. And the way we know that is the Navy Times called him up and said, how come we don't know who you are? You're supposedly one of the first Navy SEALs ever. You served in Vietnam. You got 2 Purple Hearts, 22 commendations. You fought the good fight, in Vietnam. We don't know who you are. Why is that? Actually, it was a guy named Don Shipley. He's a retired Navy SEAL. He said, this is his quote, "The Fox News, notwithstanding that story, has drove me nutty." So he decided to track down and find this man, John Garofalo. And the Navy Times did find John Garofalo. And they said, when did you serve? What unit were you in? When did you get your Purple Hearts? When did you get the commendations? What commendations did you get? It turned out none of it was true. None of it. And that all aired at the beginning of this month, and it wasn't taken down until yesterday. Until yesterday. This thing aired on Sunday. Fox News on Sunday, October 8th And they finally retracted it. When? Yesterday? Last night. And they issued an apology. We apologize to our viewers, especially veterans and servicemen and women. Now, they've been attacking the NFL for disrespecting servicemen and women, right? They're all over it. They just can't get enough of this. The president, too. And meanwhile, we just exposed two stories. One is just fake news and insignificant in that there's this 72-year-old codger who's just like Trump, who is also 71 years old, who, yells at the Fox News, yells at the TV and all this stuff, and decides to self-aggrandize and make himself into a Vietnam veteran and a hero and a Purple Heart winner and a 22 commendations, 7 years in combat. None of it's true. 1.5 million Americans watched this video, liked this video, commented about, thank you for your service. You are so brave. You're a tough, tough man. Yeah, you're a tough, tough man. People wrote, I hope the president is listening. This is what America's all about. They went crazy for this fake man and this fake news story. But even more importantly, we find out that General John Kelly lied and acted as a human shield, trashed a congresswoman who was the principal of the school that LaDavid Johnson's father attended. That's how long she knows this family, decades and decades. The family knows her as the school principal. Oh, in fact, I printed out, I didn't bring it. Damn it. One of her students locally, a guy who listens to us locally, wrote me a note about how, when he met her and how her office, she's got interesting taste, I'll tell you. The cowboy hats are interesting, and she does collect clowns. She's just freaky. Should put her in touch with Stephen King. But she collects clowns. Her office was full of clowns and, stuff like that. And he was, in the school. He was doing some work, and she brought him in, and she told him, he could be anything. Really inspired him. He said he'll never forget her. She's just so inspirational. She's beloved by the community here. I could tell you that. And they literally trashed this woman so that Donald Trump could not comment on the deaths of 4 soldiers that happened on October 4th. And he opened up, even Brett Baier said, look, the president started this. There's just no question. So all this is completely off the hook, and it's because the president did it. Which number is that? Huh? Okay, watch.
Didn't say what that congresswoman said. Didn't say it at all. She knows it, and she now is not saying it. I did not say what she said, and I'd like her to make the statement again, because I did not say what she said.
Wow.
And what she said, he said, was that her husband knew what he signed up for. I bring this up, Brett, because there's so much going on and so much to do, but yet there's a lot of focus on that right now.
Yeah, there are some people in this town who blame the media for jumping on it and focusing on it, but we have to go back to that original statement. The president was asked about Niger and the 4 soldiers there, and why we hadn't heard about what happened. We still, by the way, haven't heard exactly what happened in that operation. We hope to have more tonight on Special Report. But the 4 soldiers who died, and then he turned it to previous presidents and whether they called or didn't call or reached out or didn't reach out. And that was his answer. That's what started this whole cascade.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Now, I got to tell you, the president isn't done using human shields. He sent out his son and his daughter-in-law, Eric and Laura Trump. Now, Laura Trump says something very interesting. It goes by pretty fast, so let me give you a little heads up. She's going to say, first, Eric's going to say how disgusting it is that, we're lying about his dad. But then Laura, Eric's wife, is going to say that she read a transcript of the call. She read a transcript of the call. Now, she's going to say the words that Donald Trump was reported to have said, the exact words the Congresswoman Frederica Wilson said he said. I mean, she's going to say it, but she's going to say it with like in an indignant manner to make it sound different, but it's the same exact words. He knew what he was signing up for, blah, blah, blah. But she's going to say she knows this because she read the transcript of the call. Check this out.
Criticized for the conversation that he had with the Gold Star widow. Yeah. What were your thoughts on that topic?
I think it's disgusting. I mean, I think it shows the absolute worst of politics. Here's the President of the United States calling to express his condolences on behalf of an incredibly grateful nation, and people turn it into a political item. And To me, it's disgusting.
You read the transcripts. What were your thoughts?
From what I've seen, this is just a clear case of the media not doing their job. Whenever you read exactly what he said, your husband went into battle, knowing that he could be injured, knowing that he could be killed, and he still did it because he loves this country and he did it for the American people.
She read the transcripts. Oh, I'm so relieved there was a transcript of the call, except that there wasn't. Sarah Huckabee was asked today about that answer from Laura Trump, and Sarah Sanders said there is no transcript.
On the call to Sergeant Johnson, Laura Trump seemed to suggest in an interview this morning that there was a transcript of the call and that she read it. Is there a transcript, and has it been shared with members of the president's family?
There's not a transcript of the call. I believe she was responding to reports and things that she had read, but I haven't spoken directly with her. I'd refer you to the campaign that handles her press inquiries, but there's not a transcript.
There's not a transcript. It's all fake. I don't know how else to tell it to you people. I don't know how else to tell it to you. But what's real is 2 Johnsons, a white and a black, all sergeants, that's their names, are dead because the president would not fund what the United Nations wanted, what France said they needed in that area, 5,000 troops on the ground, because there were previous attacks on military installations exactly there in Niger, and Nigerian forces were being killed. And that is why the president would not talk about it, because it's his fault that they're dead. And he knows it. Daryl in Phoenix.
Hello, Randy.
Hi. All righty. Kurt and Callie.
Hello, Randy.
Now you know why I don't go to the phone. All right.
What do you mean? I'm here.
Not you, the other guy.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what happened. I'm just I'm actually writing a school assignment as I'm listening to the radio. I'm back in school trying to get a degree, Randy.
Oh, that's great. Good for you.
I was tuned out for a second, but yeah, I wrote you a couple of times to tell you that I'm trying to get a degree in real estate, and that's the only reason why I'm still here in America. Because I think I told you last October that if the person that's in the White House right now became president, I was leaving, just like you bailed in 2014. And I told Tom Hartman that too.
Yeah, but I didn't leave the country because of who the president was. I left the country because I had quit my job and needed to have a life that costs less. That's why I left the country.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, in any case,
I came back to the country because of who the president is.
That's right. You came a little bit too late, though.
No, I came during the election. I came back July 15th of 2016. That's the first day that we started back. And I came back and I did it myself, and I don't work for anybody. I don't get a paycheck and all that crap. And I did it because of the election cycle. I did it because I understood he was going to win. I was one of the few people that knew he was going to win because I knew that she was not up for this, that she didn't understand what was going on the internet.
I know, but see, from my vantage point, Randy, I was wishing that you had come back about 3 months sooner so that you could have helped push Bernie over the finish line.
Yeah, well, I couldn't. I mean, there was just no way I had to build this thing, you know?
Yeah, see, that would have been ideal.
Yeah, well, you know, you have to build things, and it takes a little while. And I think we did pretty good. I mean, we started building this thing in February of 2016.
Yeah.
Took us 6 months, but it's pretty spectacular.
Well, yeah, I'm proud of you. As a matter of fact, I sent you an email.
It's a long way to go.
I'm proud of you. I sent you an email asking.
All right, okay. So now you know why we don't take calls. This was a very important show, okay? This was really important. It tells you what happened in Niger. It tells you that it had happened before. It tells you that our troops did not have what they needed, either from our country or from the colonizing French, who have destroyed great swaths of the world. The colonizers of the world, the people like who take these territories, and cannot govern and don't know what to do and can't afford to keep them, but want them anyway. You have places all over Africa with no decent government. Somalia doesn't have a government. Yemen doesn't have a government. Niger doesn't have a government. Mali doesn't have a government. And guess where all these terrorists are going to migrate to? But the UN understands it. And the UN said, give us money for 5,000 troops. Things are going on there. Nigerian forces have been killed there in June. We need backup. And the United States refused to fund it. They want, oh, you pay your fair share. You pay your fair. Now you know why that's such a stupid thing to say. 4 dead boys, 4 of them. 2 Johnsons, Isaiah and LaDavid, Sergeant Wright and Sergeant Black. It's pretty easy to remember their names. They did not have to die. If they would have gotten any sort of intelligence, they would have known. Buy a stinking podcast. Go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.